Before I go on and introduce ourselves, I want to tell you a little story. I have a very, very close friend of mine, and we touch bases regularly. And on this day, when I spoke with him, he said he has less than, I think, 250 or 400 contacts on his phone. And me on my phone, I have, I don't know, maybe close to 2,000 or so. So I asked him, how are you doing this? And then he told me that every year he audits the contact list on his phone. I said, What do you mean audit? He said, if I have not heard from you and I've not spoken with you in a year, he deletes you from his contact list. To which I said, I hope I haven't been deleted. And he now laughed and said, no, I'm obviously talking to you now. So I've reset the thing for a year. And I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And the idea of auditing relationships now comes to bear.
Yeah, just coming to our orbit for the first time. My name is Audits Too. And this is Stanley. And we are your hosts on the Great House Conversations, where we believe that marriage and life in general is not just black or white, but many shades of grey. And today is another shade of grey that we're touching, which is the importance of community, or the role of community. And in this particular one, we're talking about friendships, right? Couple friendships, and couple of friendships. Like how I know, right?
You should clarify that too.
Yeah, about friendships as a couple, like when you're kind of, your friendships as you get older, either individually or as a couple. That's why I said couple friendship and a couple of friendships. And the conversation today is continued from last week. So if you haven't seen that episode, go see that, where we're talking about, I hope email is kind of the best. Is email the best way to reach you? So we're continuing that thread. And the reason that we continue that thread is just kind of this idea that the older you get, it's almost like you kind of grow up, which is interesting because as you're getting older, you're growing up, but you grow up right in the area of relationships, either by hook, by crook, or by whatever. Like whichever way, it's one of those things, whether you want it or not, it kind of happens. By distance, location, so many things make people kind of drift apart. But we're talking about the drifting apart that occurs either by omission or commission, right? And these are the two ways that people generally drift apart. And so that's what we want to touch upon. But there's certain ones where you're like, okay, what happened here, right? And that's the auditing that we want to highlight. Because as couples, one of the main ways that we believe that your relationships can be bolstered is really through this idea of commemoration, right? Where you're kind of talking through challenges with other people, challenges and joys, right? So you're kind of getting together and just rejoicing and, talking with other people. So if you don't have that community around you, can feel lonely, can feel like, am I the only one going through this? And it's interesting because there's a certain season of life where it gets so hard, that middle, where you're kind of like the sandwich generation. You're taking care of children, sometimes teenagers, you have your parents, you have your career, you have so many things that are kind of, pressing in on you. I don't want to say crushing in. And so there's a tendency for friendships to get squeezed out, which is interesting because friendships really, to me, are the spice of life, right? They're the ones that really make life just so worth it, right? In that sense. And so it's just almost like sad that that's kind of what gets squeezed out in the busyness of life. And so we want to come to say that should not be, right? And so what do we do to kind of make it come back? But at the same time too, you want to make sure that you're also fostering quality relationships. That's why I said you grow up. You're just like, look, you cannot be chasing about things that are not working, right? And I can use myself as an example when you talk about a friendship of drifting apart by commission, right? I have a friend of mine, I would say mutual friend, right? We've come a long way. I don't want to give too much information so that you kind of don't disclose the person's you don't give too many clues, but we've come a long way. But then I noticed that, we kind of relocated to the US, we're kind of immigrants. That's not obvious. So everyone is relocated to the US. We find each other here, and that's so. Notice I said you grew up, because at some point in time you keep saying, I hope this is not a story I'm telling myself. I hope this is not a story I'm telling myself. I'm trying to work so that I'm not like, let me be mindful of my own self. But then I always say to people, when a behavior is persistent and there's a pattern, you have to step back and say, what's going on here? So every time I would speak to this person, I remember saying, I don't like this feeling like the person gives me, right? Like, what's going on, At the time I was in graduate school, they were out doing so well. So, then I kept thinking, is it because I'm in school and they're not? But it wasn't that. It was just a question of every time you spoke to that person, they were always just highlighting the material possessions that they had and just how well they were doing, and their kids were in private school and this and that. And I realized, these are not my values though. Like, I just, I guess I had to sit there and say, like, this is just not, who I don't want to say who I am, but it's almost like when you then turn around and say, oh, you're doing X. How did you get to do X? And so after some time, it was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you continuing this relationship? I literally had to ask myself, because I said, I'm coming back to say, I do not like the way this person is making this. Every time I leave a conversation with this person, I'm feeling just, like, wow, So, and that was the feeling I wanted to interrogate, because I said, is this now me feeling like maybe because I don't have what this person has or something? But I searched high and low, and I was like, nah. It's not that at all, because I have friends who have way more than this person might have in terms of material things, and vice versa, and they do not. There's no such feeling right inside the heart. So it's almost like this is how this person has chosen to, place a marker on their own friendships in terms of this kind of comparisons. And I don't want to be, I don't want to play that kind of game. So I kind of pulled back. Actually, I did, and I wonder if they know that I did, because
they might not have also noticed. So I guess it's that dissonance. You feel like we've known each other for such a long time, and as a couple, you know each other for long, and then you're pulling back. You're not sharing information, and so when they say being intentional about and spending quality time, the relationship, the conversations are not those successes of, I should say, challenges. I don't use the word failures that you have, that you can commiserate with each other, you can encourage each other, but it's always almost like the Facebook reels where you're only seeing this part of the and you're not seeing when the person is and so you if you've been out for a while, it becomes framed, it becomes staged, so like you miss that, and then the question now becomes, are you being oversensitive? Are you being envious? You start to second guess yourself, and you're like, okay, do I push forward? Do I press into this relationship and try and keep fighting for what I have, or do I does self-dignity come in? Do I step back a little bit and see if we want to continue this relationship? So you don't have the answer. It's like a dance, like a balance, you know.
And I have to say, you kind of almost like you become, I don't want to say like a parent, but you kind of almost like leave what you see modeled. In my own case, my parents were, I would say to my mother, I said, you would just let people walk over you. Like that's kind of what I used to tell her growing up, because my parents were the epitome of just like relationship. It's almost like they will do anything for people, and I always used to be like, but you people are the older one. The thing that I took out from there was loyalty, like loyalty to almost to a fault, because you follow a relationship or a friendship to too much of a logical conclusion, right? It's almost like until the person slams it in your face before you realize, hey,
they didn't want
me in here, right? In that sense, but so it's something that we, right, kind of almost, I don't want to say struggle with. Like, loyalty is a family value for us, just as a couple, and we take that out into like our relationships. And so we want to, we'll visit people anytime we're in any town where we have our friends. We kind of stop and make sure we're saying hello and all of that. But because it's the great couch and we're trying to be honest, we had to audit it and say, look, I hope we're not being pesty. You know what I mean? I hope we're not being people who people feel like, what what's going on, guys, and so it's kind of like, okay, is it something you kind of need to dial back or whatever? Because it wasn't a question of, like you didn't have what to do, where to stay on, any of that. But that's why I said it's a question of just the relational part of it, the affiliation part of, if we're in a town where our friends are, we're gonna kind of, want to say hello. But as you're growing up, you realize maybe not everyone wants to be said hello to, right, in that sense, and so you adjust. So that's kind of what we're saying, because we don't know why that person would not want to say hello, and we cannot make any presumptions or anything, but you then sit back and say, hey, what is the state of this relationship right now, and take it for what it is, and then you move forward, right? You're not going to keep like waxing nostalgic or saying, oh, I wish things were better. It is what it is, especially if you've kind of, done the reaching out, because there's ways you reach out and you realize, okay, maybe the person is not trying to get back to me. However, there's also the part of people are going through things and they're just not used to leaning on people, right? So they'll stay away, which I feel it's really sad, because I think, to me, it's a vestige of the society we're in, where people feel like they have to go it alone, and so you don't hear from them. Then you're hearing from them after they've passed through the storm, and it's like, oh, I went through a lot, and I'm thinking, but that's what we're here for. That's the purpose of community. So it's almost like, how do we learn back to lean back on ourselves the way we grew up,
leaning on others and getting
help. The way we grew up, like I said, from our parents, knowing that people would, come together and do things for people just because, right? Just because you had this association of women, association of men doing their thing, and just kind of being social. I kind of think, what's the new form of socialness now, and how do we keep up with that? I mean, we're Nigerians, so we're very social. We're very, very social, but there's a socialness and then there's community. I always say that because those are two different things. Community implies reciprocity, like Ubuntu. We've talked about that. Like, we're here because you're here, right? We wouldn't be here if you weren't here. So we're all kind of getting from each other. We're not feeling like I'm better than you, you're better than me, right? We add to each other. It's that additivity, right? Because we're present. So symbiosis, I guess. This happens, in natural biology. So why are we not, as human beings, why are we trying to cut off what is natural to organismic life, right? Like, symbiosis is a thing that I would say biology uses to continue to make life, right? So I think that we need to continue to have that mindset in things, but it's not easy, right? That's what Stan was saying the other time, that you find people who say, I've been so generous and I've been so hurt, like I've been so taken advantage of and all that, because people will do that, and so they will kind of withdraw and pull into their shells and not do anything. And I just say, when those things happen, because I've also been completely a victim of that, I say to myself, you have to go back to your values, right? Like, is your value that you're doing that kindness for people, or that you're doing the kindness because you're a kind person, right? You kind of have to think about it that way. Like, why would one person change the essence of who you are? Obviously, you'll be smarter or wiser, but it shouldn't change the essence of who you are. It's like the loaning money thing, like people say. Now, if someone comes to loan you money, you may loan the money that you don't have any problem. If they don't pay you back, you wouldn't, cry about it. But you can't keep loaning people money and then complaining. Like, I feel like, again, it's the spirit behind what you're doing, as opposed to the deed itself.
So in closing, I want to segue back to my friend, right? What he does is very, very courageous and difficult.
Yeah, because I have over 1,000 contacts too, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I should go audit these things. Because some of them are since I came into this country almost 20 years ago. And that's terrible if you think about it, because some of these people might even be dead, literally, right? Like, if you want to go morbid, and you still have them on your phone. So it's like, why do we do this? Why do we hold on to things that
need to be let go of.
Yeah,
you know. And that goes to my second point. What it is courageous to look at the facts,
the reality
for
of
where
what
you are.
is, yeah.
And then that's letting go, that pruning. So instead of looking at it as a relationship audit,
That was
more like a
lost.
relationship pruning.
Yeah.
Because those that are there can now flourish
Yeah,
more.
you have time for them.
Yes.
Yeah, as opposed to like trying
being
to
stretched thin.
trying to reach out to so many people. I mean, for some people, it's personality. You know, an extrovert will have way more contacts than a person who is introverted. But so that makes you wonder, like, why would an introverted person have that many people? So, I mean, this was my first time hearing this story. That's why I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to take a lesson from this, and also like, you know, purge the phone.
What's in this for you as a marriage and relationship? As in, are you courageous enough to look at those relationships that are working and continue to point to them? Those that are not so working, and be just able to either give them space or prune for now, so that the others can grow. You know, and do it not from a place of envy or anger or judgment, because that's what I used to do. I used to, this person let me down, never again. You know, and that's not the growth. Growth now says, you don't know what they were going through. It was just wasn't working for them. Children in a different space, move to a different location, family members in a different space. You know,
so many
things. And so is that maturity to say, listen, we're going to prune this for now, but if you come back into our orbit or my orbit, we're here for you, you know, and you feel lighter for it. Not so guilty during holiday season.
I'm laughing at Stanley because he himself. How many times have you reached out to people in certain years, like you're just like, just kind of ignored some people for some time?
Thanks for calling me out on the couch. But those that I know their birthdays, on birthdays are special days. True. I will remember your birthday. If I don't remember your birthday, hey,
then no, you're not friends.
Yeah. And so that is my own thing. And it's not transactional. A lot of these people don't know my birthday, and I intentionally don't share them unless you see me on Facebook or something like that. But it lets you know, hey, listen, it's been a year. I haven't spoken to you in a while. How are you doing? You know.
So in summary, I mean, when you talk about friendships, right, I think the reminder is that those that are for you will be for you. But the older that we get, we want to be for other people, right? You want to make sure that you are being there for other people and being, friends for people in that sense, because that's what life is about. You know.
Thanks for hanging with us up until the end. From our couch to yours. Until next week. Bye for now.